SmartB Sports Update Podcast is brought to you by Optimum CBD. For all your rest and recovery needs, CBD products are your best bet. Go to optimumcbd.store to order now. Free delivery on all orders over $99. You must be over 18 to order. I use Optimum CBD products personally for my rest and recovery. I train 6 days a week in Jiu-Jitsu, as you've probably heard on the SmartB Sports Update Podcast. I teach, I train, I compete. And without Optimum CBD products, I wouldn't be able to do it. Optimum CBD for all your rest and recovery needs.
1 day till Origin.
Yeah. Afternoon, John. The big decider in Sydney tomorrow night. Be interesting to see how it goes. As you just mentioned to me, Brian Toto and Payne Haas are ready to play. So, not long to go until kick-off. Only a bit over 24 hours to go. Until the big one.
Nobody cares. Well, Bulldogs fans care. Bulldogs fans care a lot because it's obviously had a massive effect on their run with a lot of players missing and stuff like that. Ended up, I don't even know what happened on the weekend. I was watching it and I couldn't understand how they lost that game. They were up 18-0. And then got run down by Ezra Mam.
I don't know how you manage that, how you're up 18-0 with 20 minutes to go, holding the team scoreless for 60 minutes, and then you let in 4 tries in the space of 13 minutes. I don't understand how that happens. I think they definitely got cocky. I think they definitely thought they had the game in the bag. And in the modern game, you don't have the game in the bag when you're up by 18 with 20 to go. You're not there yet. The job's not done, and they found that out the hard way on Friday night, that's for sure.
Well, I felt really bad for Matt Burton. He was clearly playing out of position. They made him make way for Lachlan Galvin. They put him out into the centres. He got run out like once or twice because he ran the wrong lines. Like if he had been further infield, it would have been a good run. And that's one of the things with he's so used to bring up. He was the centre of the year at Penrith in 2021
or whatever.
Yeah, like he hasn't played centre basically at all. He was out of position on defence. When you're a 5'8", you don't run into the ball like you do when you're a centre. So he was like a lot of drop balls or being out of position when the pass was coming to him because he's not used to running onto the ball as much anymore. Defensively, he made a few big errors because your centre is super important to defence. 5'8", less so.
Yeah, and you feel like I'd like to think if Stephen Crichton had been there, he would have shut those tries down. It was down that side where the Broncos found them out, where Ezra Mam found them out. With those 3 try assists that he had.
Yeah, I was surprised it took the Broncos 60 minutes to realise Matt Burton's not having a good game, actually. That was the thing. And
it was an interesting... You just touched on it there. It was an interesting debate they had on NRL 360 last night about this. Now, Braith and Astor seemed to hint that he felt like the Bulldogs were testing the water by having Burton in the centres. And they were seeing how it went with Galvin at 5'8". Obviously, with Crichton not there, they were able to move Burton to the centres to see how Galvin goes at 5'8". Obviously, alongside Sexton and obviously leaving Reid Marnie at hooker. That ongoing juggling act that's going on between those 3. So it was quite interesting. Brent Reid was adamant that no, he was just moved out there. It was a one-off because Stephen Crichton... was unavailable due to State of Origin representation, but Braith and Astor and Phil Rothfield were both adamant that, they were testing the waters. If it had gone well, then they would have kept it that way. And I tend to agree with Astor and Rothfield on that.
He was moved out there at the last minute. It was in that hour change. He was named at 6. At the beginning of the week, I'm 100% certain they didn't intend to have him out there, and I think that Braith and Astor and Phil Rothfield are onto something there, where they were just like, well, we may as well test it out. Because it's also, didn't he... Bronson Cherry was also moved to the opposite side to accommodate, right?
And Marcelo Montoya was moved onto the other wing as well. So So this is the thing. You do feel like they're going to a lot of trouble here to accommodate one player. They moved Marcelo Montoya onto the other side of the field. As you said, Bronson Cherry onto the other side of the field. Matt Burton moved out of position into the centres, who would normally play 5'8". That's just to have Galvin at 5'8". And then you've got, some others as well. Bailey Hayward's been moved back to the bench. So that's a lot of flow-on effect. And obviously with Hayward moving back to the bench, they'd promoted Jake Turpin to the starting side there. But that's a lot of flow-on effect for just facilitating Lachlan Galvin there.
Yeah, it's weird. It's, that it's in the middle of the year. Now is not the time to do that. And I saw an interesting point raised by a person that Phil Gould, when he was at the Panthers, spent a lot of time doing the same kind of stuff, tinkering and tinkering and tinkering. Oh, not Phil Gould, but the Panthers spent a lot of time tinkering and tinkering and tinkering while Phil Gould was there. And it wasn't until he moved on that actually something settled down and they were able to, reach the heights that they reached. Obviously, he gets all the credit for setting up all the juniors and the pathways and the signings and the salary cap and all that stuff. But are the Bulldogs at that point now where they actually need to move Phil Gould on so he'll stop tinkering and just leave it in the hands of the capable coach that Cameron Serrato so obviously is?
Yeah, well, it's looking that way. And it was also pointed out that Phil Gould hasn't actually been at a club that's won a premiership, just on that point there, since 2002 when he was the coaching director at the Roosters. So he hasn't actually been at a club that's won a premiership for 23 years. And that's sort of getting back to that point. He's great at setting up the pathways. He's great at setting up the junior system. He's great at getting them to the point the Bulldogs are at now, but in terms of taking that next step and winning the premiership, well, as you alluded to, Penrith didn't start winning those 4 straight premierships until he had left the club. So it's a valid point. And you talk about the coaches he's had falling outs with. He's had a falling out with Ivan Cleary. Ivan Cleary maintains that he's never been hurt as much as he was hurt by Phil Gould when Phil Gould sacked him from Penrith the first time.
Was that when he was tired?
Yeah, when he was tired, and then he went back, and obviously he's won 4 premierships. Obviously, he had that falling out with Anthony Griffin, who was the Penrith coach as well.
Sacked Matty Elliott.
This is the thing. Is there a bit of Donald Trump with Phil Gould in that regard? Because I watch a lot of podcasts with Donald Trump's biographer, Michael Wolff, and he always says that Donald Trump falls out with 100% of the people he comes into contact with. And I don't know if you go that far with Phil Gould, but certainly he's got a rap sheet of falling out with any coach he comes in contact with. And if you were Cameron Serrato, would you be concerned about that at this point?
Yeah, well, it did come down to at the Panthers, if the media or rumours were to be believed, Panthers had a choice between Nathan Cleary and Phil Gould. Nathan Cleary wanted to be coached by his dad, so Phil Gould was chasing Wayne Bennett at the time for the Panthers. God, I can't imagine how that would have gone. And then, Nathan Cleary was basically telling them, well, I want to go be coached by my dad, so if it's not Ivan Cleary, then I'm going to leave. And so they picked Nathan Cleary. Well, they obviously made the right choice. So the Bulldogs, really think the Bulldogs are coming to that crossroads now. And obviously there's a lot of people going on about it's origin period, you should stop blaming Galvin, so on and so forth. You don't know, blah, blah, blah. But they've lost 2 in a row for the first time this year. Every other club is affected by origin, just
and
the Broncos.
The Broncos were too.
Broncos.
Yeah.
The Bulldogs were on top of the ladder
Couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, and then their slide has coincided with the arrival of Galvin and the tinkering. Fair enough if they wanted to get Galvin over there. It's the tinkering that is really causing them issues. All you really have to do is objectively sit down and look at that game on the weekend and see Matt Burton was clearly out of position. It reminded me of when Braithen Astor was put at fullback for a week against by Brad Fittler, I believe. and it was just laughable. You know, he clearly was out of his depths at fullback. And yeah, that's what it looked like to me. Like
this is the thing. Why would you move your best 5'8" into the centres just because you want to facilitate a 5'8" who's not as good as Lachlan Galvin? If they thought Lachlan Galvin was a better 5'8" than Matt Burton, well, Lachlan Galvin should have replaced Matt Burton at 5'8" a little while ago.
Yeah.
So
maybe when they had easier games as well and not running into the finals. Like I can.
That's the thing. So obviously they think that Matt Burton's a better 5'8" than Lachlan Galvin because the only reason Burton shifted into the centres was because Crichton wasn't there. If Crichton had been there, Burton would still have been the 5'8". And so they think that Burton's a better 5'8" than Galvin. So why would you pick the weaker 5'8" at 5'8"? 5'8" is a more key position than centre. You should be prioritising the spine positions. You don't pick your best 5'8" at centre just because your best centre's not playing this week just to facilitate some other 5'8".
Like, Galvin hasn't done anything to warrant it.
And Braithen Astor said that as well on NRL 360, that he feels as obviously he's a former Bulldog himself, and he feels as though Galvin's just been handed a jersey, hasn't had to earn it, and he believes that that's got other players' noses out of joint. Tell you what, Reid Marnie and Toby Sexton, two members of the Spine who helped get them to the top of the ladder. Wouldn't you love to be a fly on the wall in the conversations that those two are having with one another at the moment? Obviously, we talked about it on the last podcast that Toby Sexton signed that 2-year deal with Catalans. He'll join Catalans. He's leaving the Bulldogs at the end of the season. Since our last podcast, it's also been announced that Reid Marnie will join the Cowboys. He'll be replacing Reece Robson, who's going to the Roosters next year. So Reid Marnie's going to the Cowboys. I think I'm pretty sure it's a 3-year deal.
Yeah.
So, those two, their conversations, I'm sure they've been talking to each other on the phone. I'd love to be listening in on those conversations.
Those two players who are key, spine, most important player, two of your most important players on your field. 50% of the spine is now left, or being let go. Those two players, the Bulldogs players, staff, and results rely very heavily on those two players, and they're already gone.
Yeah, and this was, and I think you put up my column yesterday. The point I made in my column yesterday was that the problem now is obviously I think you and we agreed last week that we think purely in terms of what's their best side for getting results for the rest of the year, it would be to drop Galvin to reserve grade. We would agree with that. But now that those two have signed elsewhere for next year and they're they've got Galvin locked away until 2028, well, now I don't think that they can drop him to reserve grade now, because what's his manager going to do if they drop him to reserve grade? His manager wasn't happy when a couple of West Tigers players made a couple of harmless social media posts about him. What's his manager going to do to the Bulldogs if they drop him to reserve grade now? Remember, they need to keep him happy because he's there until the end of 2028. Sexton and Marnie now are only there until the end of next year.
Into this year.
This year.
Yeah.
Sorry, I meant to say this year. I don't know why I said next year. They're only there until the end of this year. So they need to, their priority now is to keep Galvin happy above those two who are going to be leaving at the end of the year.
Yeah, well, that's it, right? They have to keep him happy, and what happens if Lachlan Galvin isn't happy. He goes and dobs you in.
What his manager does.
Dobs you into his manager, and his manager tears your team apart.
His manager will go to Phil Gould with a dossier of a whole bunch of reasons why Cameron Ciraldo can't coach.
Or, sue them for bullying him, for dropping him, or something like that. And, that's one of the other things about him. Like, it's... Bulldogs are in this position now where they have Galvin, and they have to keep Galvin, and they're stuck with Galvin, and they're in danger of losing Galvin. And then if the contract finishes and they don't renew him, Galvin's now in a position where, unless the Bulldogs go out and pull, premierships out of their hat, Galvin's now in a position where he he'll be remembered as the guy that made the Bulldogs go on a massive slide in 2025.
Well, the way it's going, I mean, they were on top of the ladder a couple of weeks ago. Now they've slipped to third spot. They've lost 2 games in a row. And just the way that they lost that game against the Broncos, was terrible. I thought it was just pathetic, the fade out. All you need to, if you're up 18-0 with 20 minutes to go, well, all you need to do at that point is just get through your sets, get a long kick on the end of it, and don't give away any penalties. And if you do those things, you get the job done from that position. But they couldn't get the job done. They made too many mistakes. He was one player, Lachlan Galvin, who pushed the pass too many times. They didn't need to take risks like that in the position that they were in. They made errors. They gave the Broncos great field position, and Ezra Mann punished them.
Yeah, well, that's like I said. I think it's a bit weird that it took Ezra Mann or the Broncos that long to identify that Burton was actually the weak link, and then they did, and that was all she wrote. Like that's it.
Yeah, and they can't blame the Bulldogs. They got nobody else to blame because they went into this Galvin deal with their eyes wide open. They knew what he did at the Tigers. They knew what his manager did at the Tigers. And they've gone ahead and signed him anyway, and now they're stuck with him for 3.5 years.
Yeah.
So they've gone all in with Galvin now. They're all in on Galvin. So that's why, as I said in that column, that's why I don't think that now that it's a viable option to drop him to reserve grade anymore because they're going to upset a player who is there for the long term as opposed to Marnie and Sexton who are going at the end of the year.
You look at these stats from Matt Burton being put out of position. Like, I can show you my WhatsApp. Like, all game from the kickoff, basically, I was messaging a WhatsApp group saying it's so obvious Burton is out of position and he's going to be in trouble. He's the point to attack. And then when it happened, I was like, they finally realised. But he has one of the worst tackle efficiency out of the Bulldogs for the week. He missed 3 tackles, a couple of them led in tries. He made 4 errors, 3 handling errors, and gave away 3 penalties, all because he was out of position.
Yeah.
The ball was being passed to in front of him or behind him, and he was like trying to catch it. Or gave away 3 penalties for being out of position or doing the wrong thing, and that's like you said, the Bulldogs only have themselves to blame. They also, he kicked, 5 times or something like that?
I've got it in front of me.
5 times. Is it 5? Yeah, he did.
Shots on goal?
No, just
general play.
Yeah, right, he kicked 5 times. The only person who kicked more was Toby Sexton.
Right.
Toby Sexton actually kicked less. Toby Sexton kicked 4 and Lachlan Galvin kicked 4. So the centre, their best kicking weapon, was doing the most kickings with the centre.
Yeah.
So do you really want your centre kicking for you? Is that your number one kicker?
Well, it just threw them right out of whack. All those positional changes that I mentioned, it threw them out of whack. And another point that I made in the column was that, you know what their record is against teams currently sitting outside the top 8? 10 from 10. You know what their record is against teams currently sitting inside the top 8? 1 win from 5 games. So what does that tell you? Does that tell you that maybe they're flat track bullies? As I said, 10 from 10 against non-top 8 teams, 1 from 5 against top 8 teams.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, right? They weren't really tipped to win the premiership or favourite to win the premiership, but they were performing really well, and now they're on a slide. And the slide has coincided with Lachlan Galvin's arrival. Now, you can say you can't blame him. It's not him who missed all the tackles and all this other stuff. I see people trying to defend Lachlan Galvin, but not just Lachlan Galvin, but the arrival of Lachlan Galvin has coincided with a Bulldogs slide. First on the ladder to third. First time in the year they've lost 2 in a row. Mm-hmm. Dropping games from being up by
18-0 with 20 minutes to go.
20 minutes to go.
And that's the thing, it didn't even... You watched the game, right?
Yeah.
It didn't... Sometimes with these comebacks, you can sort of pick it. You can see it coming. Sometimes you can see it coming.
Yeah.
You did not see that one coming.
No.
At the 60th minute, what would the Broncos have been paying with betting with bookmakers at the 60th minute?
I think it was around $8 or something like that. $6, something like that.
We
were talking about it.
Would have been some ridiculous amount of money that the Broncos were paying at the 60th minute. So last year, you needed to win 16 games to make the top 4. They've won 11. They got 9 to go. I don't know. I mean, it's an open question now whether they make the top 4. It's not a foregone conclusion that they make the top 4. They've got to win 5 of their last 9 to make the top 4 now.
Well, that's it, though. You know they'll make the 8, but you don't know if they make the
8.
4.
Yeah, I mean, if they were to miss the 8, it'd be a catastrophe from this position. But I'll tell you what, the top 4 is not a foregone conclusion. They got the Cowboys, Dragons, Manly, West Tigers, Warriors, Roosters, Storm, Panthers, Sharks to finish up.
So some of those,
they got to win 5 of those.
Some of those low-ranked teams, like the Dragons, or the inconsistency. Where are the Cowboys sitting? Yeah, 12th. Like these teams are still in the run for the race for the 8, right? 6 wins. Panthers are in there with 7 wins. Dolphins and Sea Eagles are in there with 8 wins. Those teams like the Cowboys, Dragons that you mentioned are looking at it and going, "Oh, we have a much better chance against the Bulldogs now."
Yeah,
you know, like a couple of weeks ago, they would have been looking at the draw, going, "Oh, we got no chance. That's another loss for us." But now they're looking, they're going, "Sweet, this could be one of those games that we win." So Bulldogs are soon starting to lose some of their aura as well. And again, it coincides with the arrival of Lachlan Galvin. Now,
yeah, so if you look at Galvin, his first game was that game against the Eels. So they won that, and then they beat the Rabbitohs. So 2 from 2, lost to the Panthers, lost to the Broncos. So they're 2 from 4 with Galvin. 2 wins from 4 games with Galvin. So before he got... So they're 11 wins, 4 losses. So before he got there, they were 9 wins, 2 losses. Since he's got there, 2 wins, 2 losses.
Yeah.
So
I think it just speaks for itself. And yeah, like you can sit there and say all you want, "Oh, it's not Lachlan Galvin's fault, it's the team as well." But it's not just Lachlan Galvin. Lachlan Galvin is basically the word you use to point out that the Bulldogs have made a massive mistake in doing what they have done. Bowing to the Lachlan Galvin's need to move in the middle of the Tigers' year. You know, picking up a player and disrupting their whole team.
They bowed to the need. Why didn't they say, "Look, we want you next year.
Yeah.
If you want to go play for someone else the rest of the year, all right, but we don't want you until next year."
We're 9-2.
Someone else would have taken him for the rest of the year on some 6-month contract.
We're 9-2. We don't need any changes right now. We'll see you next year.
See you next year.
Yeah. Like that's.
And if you want to go to some other club for the rest of this year, go for it. We'll see you next year.
But they didn't. And they went with the Galvin, and now you've got this situation where they're 2-2 when previously they were 9-2, and Origin period, blah 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 blah. But I think like the Broncos were just as affected by Origin as the Bulldogs. Okay, so this is really like an important point, because for every counter argument to Lachlan Galvin or the Lachlan Galvin situation being the catalyst for the Bulldogs' current slide, there is a counter argument. The main argument that people raise is it's Origin period. We got a lot of players out for Origin. But they played the Broncos, who also have a lot of players out for Origin. You know, and they had... the Broncos...
Reece Walsh, Shibasaki, Payne Haas.
They're best players. The Broncos didn't move Ezra Mam out to centre to accommodate for some young half-back that they bought, right?
Pat Carrigan as well was another one. So it was 4-4, so it cancelled it out. Yeah. The Origin representative cancelled each other out. They had Carrigan, Walsh, Haas and Shibasaki out. The Bulldogs had Crichton, Kiraz, Mann and King out. So it was 4-4. But also
2 backs and 2 forwards as well. 2 backs. But
I think you could say 4 Origin players out each. All right, that cancels itself out. Yeah.
2 backs and 2 forwards as well. So you can't even say like, because our forwards couldn't keep up with the defence. 2 backs and 2 forwards each. So. Hey, it's
the only thing I would say is I think if Crichton was there, he would have shut down those tries on that side, because he's the best defensive centre in the game. That's the only thing I would say.
Bulldogs won one of their Origin matches without their Origin players against. I can't remember anyway, but like that's what I mean. The issue is not like Lachlan Galvin, although he is the buzzword that you have to keep saying. The issue is that they created this massive reshuffle. To move their 5/8 into a position that he's not used to, even though he used to play there. Just because he used to play there doesn't mean he can still play there, especially like on a week's notice. And it caused a hole in their defence that the Broncos were able to exploit with 20 minutes to go. And so, teams will be named in 2 hours.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. We're not going to be on for that.
Yeah.
We'll be done before that, so we won't get that news for you. But yeah, I doubt, even though we both agree their best option in terms of winning games right now would be to drop Galvin to reserve grade. I doubt that will happen because of those reasons I mentioned, because they've got a long-term investment in him until 2028, so they don't want to upset him because they're locked into him long-term, as opposed to Sexton and Money, who are going at the end of the year.
Yeah, and then, so you might see, at most, Galvin's going to be back to the bench.
Yeah. Look, if I had to say what's the most likely scenario, I think it would be that they'll just do that again.
Yeah. Or they're going to put Burton at centre and Crichton at centre. But you also don't know an hour before kickoff as well. You don't know an hour before kickoff what they're going to pick as well.
But that's why I reckon they did it an hour before kickoff, because they didn't want the media to talk about it on Tuesday last week when the teams were named. So I suspect that they named Burton in the 6th at 5/8 because they didn't want. Yeah, we'll name the team like that, and then we won't make the switch till an hour before kickoff, so we'll get in under the guard of the media, so they can't talk about it.
Their whole naming this week was really just all over the shop, with 21 being pulled in and 19 being dropped and 16. It was just crazy. So yeah, there's some. There could have been some sneaky buggers from Phil. You just suspect Phil Gould. I don't know if Cameron Serrato's that kind of coach that plays those funky mind games, or if it comes from Phil Gould. We won't know till Phil Gould hasn't got his fingers in the Bulldogs anymore. But yeah, I just think the Bulldogs, they need. We said it about Tigers last week. People will stop talking about it when they start winning. Mm. They got the Cowboys this week, which is a bit of an easier game, and then they got the West Tigers next week, which will be, mate. The West Tigers are going to be hunting heads. And then the Dragons, so they've got a pretty easy run for the next few. And so
we will know a lot more very soon.
Yeah.
We will know whether this is just a glitch or whether it's the start of a real slide.
Those 3 wins, which you would expect them to win in either way, will get them their top 8 spot, right? So they got Cowboys.
So you're talking about Cowboys,
Dragons, and then they got the Cowboys, Dragons, and Tigers. They're 3 out of the next 4. So Sea Eagles is before the Tigers, right? So you would expect them to beat the Cowboys, Dragons, and West Tigers. Who knows about Sea Eagles? They should probably beat the Sea Eagles too, right? So even if you go 3 out of those 4, they win 3 out of those 4. They've won their top 8 spot. They're all set.
Yeah.
And then they've got to play.
Then you want top 4 though.
Well, then they've got real difficulty because they got the Warriors, Roosters, Storm, Panthers in a row. So I think we're not really going to know where the Bulldogs are until round 27 when they come in against the Sharks.
Well, I don't think that they got to win 5 of those 9 to make the top 4. I don't think that's a foregone conclusion.
That's it. What I mean, they've definitely made the 8 because they've got 3 to 4 super easy matches in there. Yeah. But then they've also got 4 or 5 super difficult matches in there that'll really tell you where they're at. Because if they can't beat Roosters. So it's what was it?
This is the thing. They were on top of the ladder for most of the season, so their goal shouldn't be top 8.
Yeah,
their goal's got to be. They've got to make the top 4. The goal now has to be make the top 4.
They've got Warriors.
They have to make the 4.
Warriors, Roosters, Storm, Panthers, Sharks. 4 out of 5 of those games are. I can't say which ones. 4 out of 5 of those games are going to be really difficult. It could be any of the 4. It could be the Panthers are the easy one in that, but that's where you'll know where they really are.
Yeah.
And so we kind of did the first 2.
Yeah, we did them. We can move on to number 3.
Yeah, mate. Ricky Stuart's Kyle Flanagan's best friend. This was a very interesting press conference, actually. I didn't watch it all. I just watched from this bit because I think there was a lot to agree with Ricky Stuart. So basically a ridiculous question was asked, both to Shane Flanagan and to Ricky Stuart, about the crowd booing Kyle Flanagan when he was going to kick a goal, implying that they were booing Kyle Flanagan because of what we've been talking about for the past 3 months, right? The whole Shane Flanagan, Kyle Flanagan thing. But Shane Flanagan pointed out, I didn't even notice. And Kyle Flanagan didn't even notice. And Ricky Stuart said basically, have you ever been to a game? You know, like what?
Yeah.
Why? It was the same reporter as well. So why was a reporter asking such a leading, clickbaity type question? And so Ricky Stuart sparked up, and you know he apparently took Kyle Flanagan aside after the game, and you know said, "Don't worry about it, brother. Screw them all," and pointed out that that's what he's most afraid of with his own son, who's recently made his debut. The media picking on him and so on and so forth.
But why doesn't he get his son to play for another club then? Because then that way...
Well, they live in Canberra.
But it's a point that Gorden Tallis made about Kyle Flanagan was he said the only way this is going to go away is if Kyle Flanagan goes to another club and makes it without his dad. And so that's what I would say to Ricky Stuart in response to that is, if you're that concerned, if it's that much of an issue for you, then we'll try and get your son to go play for another club then.
Well, like, there's nobody's criticising Jed Stewart right now. We'll see what happens. If he does, then maybe Ricky Stewart can foist him off as a solution. But I think, like, there's a lot of criticism around the Kyle Flanagan, Shane Flanagan situation that is well-founded by everyone. There's some people that go way over the top, like that guy that's been banned from all the drag and social media and stuff like that. John Claude Bitar or whatever his name is. I think he's a bit over the top. He swears too much and he's like really says like kind of offensive stuff. But I like the bit that I totally agree with Ricky Stuart is like, why are you asking that question? That is clickbait.
Yeah, look, I agree with that. I agree with him on that. That question was asked by somebody who clearly doesn't have much idea about rugby league. So that reporter, I'm guessing, is not normally a rugby league reporter, and they've had to just be a rugby league reporter on a one-off occasion. I don't
even think it was that, man, to be honest, because she asked the question to both of them. So she already got the response from Shane Flanagan and then went to Ricky Stuart and asked the same question. I think it was a question that, you know, maybe the reporter, maybe the editor, maybe someone back at the head office or whatever said, go poke him about the booing of Kyle Flanagan to get some sound bites. And we got sound bites. Yeah, we're talking about it. And who knows who the reporter was. I'm sure you can look it up in other media sources. But, like, that's the thing, right? It was, and, you know, it was in the news. It was highlighted. It created a spectacle. And I think that's what the goal was. It wasn't based on like, they used you've obviously never been to a rugby league game before. But if that reporter was at that game, they would have seen at every single kick that every single player was doing for a conversion, the crowd was booing.
Yeah,
right?
But what I guess the thing that frustrates me though is, like, yeah, we agree that question was a silly question, and the reporter got put in their place, and they deserve to.
Twice.
But just because one reporter asks a stupid question, just because there's social media trolls who make nasty personal attacks on Kyle Flanagan, that doesn't mean that you're not allowed to make constructive, legitimate criticism of this issue of Shane Flanagan just picking Kyle Flanagan because he's his son.
Absolutely not.
And that's what annoys me about Ricky Stuart is that he's taking... Just because there's some idiots on social media who are trolling Kyle Flanagan, so that means that nobody's allowed to make fair and legitimate criticism of the fact that Shane Flanagan's only picking Kyle Flanagan because he's his son.
I think, like, my disagreement with Ricky Stuart's overall statement is to lump all media and all social media together.
Yeah, and one point that he made was he said something like, it's the media reporting what social media says. What media outlets report what social media says? They
report that John Claude Bitar guy all the time.
Who do that? Well, okay, I write for I cover the NRL for the Fox Sports website. We never do that. Yeah. So I'm not aware of what he's talking about there. We don't do that there.
Yeah, they do. They do. Like, but one of the things, actually,
can you see why it's annoying? Like, not all the media do that.
Yeah, that's what I said, though, man. That's what I said. Yeah. The thing I take issue with was he lumped all media and social media in together. But media do that. Like, there's a thing on Reddit in all of the Australian subreddits where people will post put a watermark on their picture posts so they can't be stolen by the media. Yeah. Right? And there was actually last year or the year before, there was it was a orchestrated, really popular social media post on Reddit, a story about something, I can't even remember what it was, which was fake. And the media picked up and ran with it, you know? So Ricky Stuart, again, like, he has valid points that the media reporting on social media compounds an issue because there are... But that's the clickbait. That's the things that's not good media. And people need to... The issue also isn't even the media or the social media. The issue is the people who buy into that and click on those articles, and so make the media who answer to advertisers continue to report on this social media, right? If everybody knows that garbage is garbage, okay? Everybody knows. Everybody knows clickbait social media headlines are garbage, and they're not valid news, and they're not worth reading. Everybody knows it. If you go to somebody in the street and say to them, which I had, like, you showed a Pepsi challenge or whatever of headlines they would click on the clickbait one, and then if they read it and it was garbage, they would tell you it was garbage. But the thing is, they click on it. So media has, not all media, there are always outliers and exceptions. Media has a lot to do with the fact that social media and social media trolls are able to continue their nonsense, right? That Jean-Claude Bitter guy, really, like, as I said, like, I understand people like to watch him and he's popular and stuff like that, but he does go over the top, and he's, like, really aggressive and swears, and he swears in Arabic and all this kind of stuff, and it's, like, cool and funny, like, the first 300 times. But the 301st time, it's like, it's a little bit offensive and boring and so on. And he's like, yeah, maybe Fox doesn't report on it, but the reason I know who he is because he was in the news. You know, that's why I know who he is.
It's probably, you can probably just, like, yeah, I get what you're saying, but you can probably see my frustration in that.
Absolutely.
We would never do that. We just wouldn't cover it like that. We wouldn't give these idiots a platform. We cover what, identities in the game. So
yeah, absolutely.
We would never do what he's saying. And as you said, he lumps all the media in with the social media.
Because we can move on to Gorden Tallis' response, right? Because Gorden Tallis has made the same mistake. Because Gorden Tallis' response basically is, and he was going on and on about how wrong Ricky... Does Gorden Tallis hate Ricky Stuart? I don't know. I don't know if they've ever had blow-ups and stuff like that. I know New South Wales, Queensland, so on and so forth. But
I'm not aware of any feud, but that doesn't mean there's not one.
Gorden Tallis has responded to Ricky's comments basically by saying the media coverage of Kyle Flanagan has been fair. And now, he's done the same thing that Ricky Stuart has done, right? He said the media coverage by lumping all media together. But in reality, some media coverage of Kyle Flanagan has been unfair. And so this is where the line is, right? The hypocrisy and the problem with it all is everybody does the generalization, and then the response is to use the outlier to argue the generalization. So Ricky Stuart generalizes that all media and all social media is bad, and they're all trolling Kyle Flanagan. No, here's a bunch of outliers that aren't. Here's my response, And then Gorden Tallis is, no. All the media is fine. I don't look at social media. All the media fine. And then my response is, no, here are some outliers that aren't. And the problem with society and people and the human nature is it's the outliers we pay too much attention to. And so there has been a lot of fair... I don't care who you are, man. Like Kyle Flanagan, Shane Flanagan, the people at the Dragons fans, non-Dragons fans, everyone who follows rugby league has to admit that there's a bunch of media coverage and even social media coverage about the Kyle Flanagan and Shane Flanagan situation that is entirely fair. It's true. There are issues there. It is weird that there are a bunch of halves vying for one spot and Kyle Flanagan is picked ahead of him. It is weird that Jonah Glover leaves and says, one of the reasons I left is because I can't get ahead of Kyle Flanagan.
Yeah,
right?
Well,
this coverage is fair. And Gorden Tallis is 100% right about that. Like there's a whole bunch of, I think about those guys on his show are actually in that category of fairness,
But so he's probably coming from the same point of view as what I...
Yeah.
Again, I'm not... Obviously, I don't have the profile of Gorden Tallis, of course, but what I'm just saying in our own little... Like, he's got his TV show, and so he's on his TV show, 3 nights a week, and so because he sees that as being fair, well, then he thinks, oh, hang on, this is fair, and because I'm writing articles all the time, I'm going, well, we're not quoting.
100%.
We're not quoting morons on social media. We're covering it in a fair way.
And it's not all social media coverage is bad either, and that's like Ricky Stuart is also a goofball for saying that, like, our media and social media is bad, but not all of the social media coverage. Because when you also take into account the social media, it seems like there's a bunch of podcasts out there like ours. They post their reels on social media. Like Mitchell Pearce and Todd Carney have discussed it, actually. Their coverage is very fair. They would be considered like social media. So they're an outlier that I can present to you.
That's where they would post their clips, right?
That's an outlier that I can present to you, as they've also been very fair in their coverage of Kyle Flanagan. I believe me and you have been very fair in our coverage of Kyle Flanagan.
Yeah, we don't attack him personally.
Yeah, and it's just that's the problem with. I think the actual problem is not media or even social media. The problem is people click on the garbage, and some media organisations take advantage of that and so continue to report on that garbage. Honestly.
But that wouldn't be like Ricky Stuart to give an unbalanced response.
Oh, no, not at all. The only social media that the media should really report on is Donald Trump type social media,
Yeah.
They shouldn't report on, and you see it a lot in like really the what's it called, Daily Telegraph, news.com.au, that kind of I once said to somebody once a long time ago, right, you can tell the quality of the news media by how much they report on the Kardashians.
Yeah.
Okay, because the Kardashians were social media influencers before there was even social media. Okay. So if they're finding their news on social media, it's not a really good source of news.
There's just one other point I was going to make. Now, there was a quote from Ricky Stuart talking about Kyle Flanagan, where he said, "He is a better football player than he's been given credit for," end quote. And so what I would have said to him in response to that is I said, okay, Ricky, if you think he's that good a player, why don't you sign him at Canberra?
Yeah. Well, you've lost Jamal Fogarty.
Yeah, exactly. He could replace Jamal Fogarty. I know that Shane Flanagan's there at the moment coaching Kyle, but he's had opportunities at Canberra in the past to sign Kyle Flanagan when the Roosters flicked him, the Bulldogs flicked him. There were 2 opportunities he had there to sign him, didn't decide to sign him. Again, as you said, Fogarty's leaving. If he thinks Kyle Flanagan's such a good player, well, why don't you sign him, Ricky? Why don't you put your money where your mouth is? That's the real test of what he says. It's easy for him at a press conference to say, oh, he's a better player than he's been given credit for because he's mates with his dad. It's easy for him to say that. But the real test comes when, Kyle Flanagan's on the open market. Is Ricky Stuart going to sign him? I don't think so, because he's never signed him in his time at the Raiders.
Like it's not offensive to say that Kyle Flanagan, if he went to most other clubs, wouldn't get a start. It's just...
It's true.
You have to look from an objective view and go... It's really easy to tell.
Yeah.
Okay? You take the position he is, 5'8" or halfback. You go to a club, like you look at a club on a piece of paper if you have to, on the internet, look at their starting lineup, their 5'8" and their halfback, and say, which one would you replace Kyle Flanagan with? Yeah. And there's not many clubs in the league that you would replace their starting 5'8" or halfback with Kyle Flanagan. Unfortunately for Kyle Flanagan, maybe he has the potential to be really good. But there's a few players in the history of the world that have been the same. Like, there was, do you remember Daniel Mortimer?
Yeah.
So he was really good in his rookie year because he played for Parramatta and Parramatta sucked. And you know what? When you have a really bad team, some players will stand out a lot because they do more. And so, Daniel Mortimer at Parramatta set up like 89% of their tries or whatever because no one else in the team was setting up any tries. And so then when he went to other clubs, like I think he went to the Roosters, he went to...
Daniel Mortimer, yeah.
Didn't he go to the Bulldogs as well?
I think there was talk he was going to go to the Bulldogs at one point. I don't think he did, though.
I just remember my wife thought he had, like, really beautiful eyes. Look, he played for the Eels, Roosters, Titans, Sharks, and then went to Leeds Centurions, okay? He only played 136 games in 10 years because he was in and out of first grade, because he was the same, right? He had a really good debut year at Parramatta in 2009 when they made the grand final. Then he played over okay for Parramatta for 2010, 2011. 2009 was on the back of the Jared Hayne, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Made the grand final.
He got dropped in 2011 because he wasn't really at that level. And then when you went and compared him to everyone else, take him. He's a 6. What 6 would he replace across the league? It was nobody. So he went to the Roosters and became a fringe first grader. So moved to the Titans, was a fringe first grader. Moved to Cronulla Sharks, played 2 games. In the middle of the year, moved to Leeds Centurions.
Yeah, look, I think the point has been made in the last couple of days. The only time I think where it works, where you got a father coaching their son, is in the Ivan Cleary, Nathan Cleary scenario, where the son is like literally the first player picked in the team and is literally the best player in the comp and would literally get a start at any other team.
Yeah.
I think that's the only scenario where it works is where it's just an absolute foregone conclusion that the son of the coach gets picked, where they're that good, which is the Nathan Cleary, Ivan Cleary scenario. If it's not like that, if you've got the grey area there where they could be picked, they might not be picked, or a scenario like the Flanagans where clearly he wouldn't be picked if he wasn't, if his dad wasn't the coach, well then that's where all hell breaks loose and it's a real problem for everybody. One other point I was going to make as well was, of course, you mentioned that Ricky Stuart made a good point with that reporter's question about why were they booing Kyle Flanagan. But as with the case of Ricky Stuart, whenever he makes a good point, he always has to take it too far. And he was quoted as saying they can throw cans at him for all I care.
Can't.
So, did anyone not see this as a bit of an issue that one coach is saying that the crowd should throw cans at a rival goal kicker? I thought that was a bit of a problem, and he just went a bit too far there, and I'm surprised that one got overlooked by everybody.
Especially because at the Bulldogs game, the Bulldogs fans are currently under investigation.
Yeah, you had a coach.
Someone throwing something at the bench.
You had a coach saying that the opposing fans should throw cans at the opposing goal kicker.
No, they can boo them, and they always boo them, and that's like
but he should have
good point.
Good point. He should have just left it there. He went too far.
Good point. Every opposing goal kicker gets booed. Bad point. They can throw cans at them if they want. But yeah, because apparently on Friday there was somebody threw a bottle at the Broncos bench, and so now the Bulldogs fans are all under.
They didn't handle that. That's no way to handle. We were all frustrated with the way that they lost, but you don't go doing that.
Well,
that's
the Bulldogs meme. If we lose, we riot. If we win, we riot more. Gold.
I'm glad that game's over. I'd rather live in hell than watch that last 20 minutes of that game again.
So I went to the Roosters game on the weekend, by the way.
Oh, right.
It's like a yearly trip with my tipping comp because there's one Tigers fan and 28,000 Roosters fans in there, and then me, the poor Dragons fan, and poor Sam, the Bulldogs fan. Bloody Roosters fans never go to the Bulldogs or the Dragons games.
I'm not surprised.
And honestly, the Roosters were shocking. We were having a conversation about it at the game. Like, Mark...
Nawakana Tawazi.
Yep.
Former Wallabies player.
He got really good in attack. His defensive positioning is woeful. And they got rid of Dom Young apparently because his defensive positioning was bad. Okay, so really they wanted to sign Daly Cherry Evans in the middle of the year, but that's all over now. The Tigers, what I kind of found was when the Roosters ran the ball straight, didn't matter which player, forwards, back, kick returns, anything like that, they would hit the line and go another 10 metres, okay? If they just ran the ball, they collected the ball while running, while in motion, they'd hit the line and over they'd go. If they tried to do a step or a shimmy or anything like that, Tigers would shut them down. And the Roosters... after a little while, just started to try and do this, like running around all the time, James Tedesco tried to do too much. Piercy said right to me, he sent me. The Tigers are really good every 8 weeks. Okay.
Yeah.
They're really good in attack when it sticks, but they don't get any better on their results, right? And so Benji Marshall's... Obviously, there's been a lot of criticism of the Tigers, their handling of the Galvin situation, which you can't put on them. Them letting Talon de Silva go, the clicks, the Adam Dewey thing we talked about last week, Benji Marshall being a 9-to-5 coach. Shane Richardson's come out this week and said none of it's true, you all tell lies, and so on and so forth. But Benji Marshall in his post-game press conference basically hammered the entire world.
And it is a bit rich because, as you said, they'd lost 6 in a row going into that game.
Yeah.
So you win one game, big whoop.
Yeah, it's an
Whoopie-doo.
upset.
You won one game. That win is not going to mean anything at the end of the season because they're not going to make the 8. So, whoopie-doo. They won one game, they lost 6 before it, and he's just attacked everybody in the media. Just because they win one game, he has a go at everyone in the media, slams everybody in the media. Oh, wow, you won one game.
It was an upset against a team missing Origin players and who are also just a really erratic team. They've only won 7 this year, the Roosters.
That's the
they've
thing.
only won one more than they didn't dominate the Raiders. And they also almost lost the game, just so you know. Okay.
Yeah. And look, I know the Tigers didn't have Buller, Coruscant or Luai, but according to Phil Rothfield, the Roosters were missing 13 players from that game.
Yeah, they were.
Yeah.
They had a whole bunch of debutants. They had players pull out leading up to it.
I say according to him because he said that and I haven't checked it, but I think
it was.
right.
So like
13 players.
Can't remember the guy's name, right? I couldn't remember. They told me like 13 times on the day. The number 15 team list. Number 15. What was his name? I know the 15. Max McCarthy. Right. He doesn't even have a player profile when you click his name on NRL.com. That's how much of a debutante he is. Right? They had guys like that. They had players pull out in the lead up. They had, it was like if the Roosters fans I were with were like, we kind of expected this because there was a bunch of players that only played 2 games. They never had any chance. But I like that. That was the funny thing. Like Max McCarthy, number 15. You can't even click his name on the NRL.com because he doesn't have a player profile page. That's how fresh he is. Yeah. They have to have played before to have a thing. So it's not that big of a win. And as I said, they almost lost it.
Yeah, this is the frustrating thing. As I said, we know they're not going to be in the top 8 this year. So that win is just meaningless. I think that's been a problem for the Tigers for a long time, is they've latched onto these little moments like that where they have a win here or there and they're sort of satisfied with that. Rather than, looking at the big... I think the Tigers really fail to look at the big picture a lot of the time. They get excited by the odd win here or there, but overall we know that they really haven't gone anywhere this year when they're supposed to have gone a lot better, having signed Jerome Luai. I know they had the Galvin issues that have been well documented. But on the whole, they haven't really improved that much this year and they continue to struggle.
Just, the Roosters also scored 5 tries to the Tigers 4. The Tigers got the win.
13 players out.
Yeah, the Tigers got their win on the fact that they got 3 penalty goals, and 2 of them were soft as, not penalties. It was just ridiculous, for high tackles that were not high.
And there's also, I think there's far too much in the game of, oh, we won this week, everything's great. Oh, we lost, the world's ended, it's all over, we're never going to win another game again, the world's coming to an end. I think people are just too reactive of just based on one win or one loss for teams. I think people struggle to look at the big picture a lot of the time.
Sports fans have really a 1 week memory, honestly, they really do. But they won one game and he's Benji Marshall's, he's starting to remind me a bit of Billy Slater.
doesn't he look grumpy? He's so grumpy. He doesn't look happy at all. He looks like he hates his job.
He can't handle any criticisms, and when it's funny because when there is valid criticisms and they're going really poorly and he can't respond because, like, what's he going to say? Like, yeah, we do suck. Shut up about it. But then when he has a chance, like, you know, the 1 week memory, they beat the Roosters, then he'll just come out and just smash everybody. Like, see, you guys are all wrong. You don't know what you're talking about. But next week, Benji, let's talk next week, brother.
So, as you mentioned, the Roosters scored more tries than them. A couple of goal kicks don't go their way. They lose that game. Does he have the same blow-up if they lose that game?
They also, you know, it was 30-28, and Sandon Smith missed one of the conversions. So if he had to kick that conversion, it would have been 30-all.
Golden point.
Yeah. So it wasn't like this mass domination. Yeah, they 20-10 at half-time, and then ended up being 30-28. You know, so, yeah, he uses that as we beat the Roosters. I'm going to just lash out at everyone now and tell everyone how stupid they are, and everyone is really stupid, and then the Tigers are great, and everything's great, and so on and so forth, and everyone is just stupid.
Yeah, sorry, you lose 6 in a row and win one game against a team that has 13 players out. Sorry, I don't think that's your time to tee off at everybody.
Let's see how you go against the Warriors this week, mate.
Yeah.
In New Zealand. Yeah?
Yeah, look, I know they had their key players out, which I've touched on. Yeah, but
13 players.
Come on, the Roosters had 13 players out. Oh, seriously.
They had guys that don't have an NRL profile.
Yeah.
You can't click their name. Normally you can click their name to find out their date of birth and stuff like that. I was entering that guy into the SmartB system like, I have to enter their date of birth, so I just made it up because I couldn't find it. You know, it doesn't have a Wikipedia. It's like screw it. This guy's born 1st of the 1st 2000. What am I going to do here? Finally, in rugby league, a New Zealand reporter has made claims that she's been sidelined by her broadcast bosses.
Yes. Tiffany Salmond. She used to do the sideline for Sky Sports, the Warriors games that were shown on Fox. Now, she's not happy that she's been cast aside. I've just got some quotes from her here. Mm-hmm. She says, and I quote, "I'm not an easy hire. I'm not a safe hire because when someone only has a few minutes of airtime across a handful of games and still builds this kind of demand and this kind of fan movement, it's not normal. It's not safe. That's a disruption." End quote. Wow. I would have thought people really don't give that much thought to who's commentating the game. I think that. That's certainly a bit much there.
She was one of the ones that got all those AI deepfakes done to her as well.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So that was that's still going on, major issue.
She went on to say, "Isn't that why so many of you have been demanding my return?" She said, "Because you could see something real in me. You could feel the authenticity through the screen." End quote. Wow. Were you feeling that authenticity through the screen?
I had no idea who she was, and I had, I just remember as soon as I opened the page to look her up, I had to. I was like, oh, I recognise that face. She was one of the deepfake ones, which is a terrible and vile thing to do, by the way. I'm in no way supporting that like that, but that's why she's famous to me because she was one of the people that was targeted. Because people are scumbags and they find like a good-looking woman and they'll make deepfake porn of them. Like, oh. Seriously, it's disgusting.
Yeah, you're right, but I mean... This is just delusional, isn't it?
Yeah, to say she's been sidelined because of, she's too bold and disruptive. Look, there has been quite a few women that have been sidelined or disappeared in sports journalism. And as much as I hate to say it, I think from a boss point of view, like a network point of view, one of the reasons they do it is because of the way fans react to them. And it's we've talked about it before, it's really hard to deal with. Like TikTok, we just let run wild. You know, you can say anything on our TikTok thing because it's too hard to keep up with the vitriol and the disgusting stuff that people say. You know, we had to take that one video about our discussion about women should get equal rights in equal pay in sports from a long time ago because within 12 hours of me being asleep, it had hundreds of comments, and all of them were like just disgusting and horrible. So as much as I hate to say it, I think that a lot of women would be removed from sports coverage in male-dominated sports because the fan base are so awful. It's too hard for them to keep up with the moderation of social media. Like this girl, I don't know about her personally or her individually, but triggers, like they said, triggers a deeper discussion about women in sports and commentary in sports. Like Erin Molan was removed as well. She's gone full Trump, I think. She was, or the opposite way. I can't remember. She's gone full political now. Removed because she had a falling out with Andrew Johns. That was the whole thing with that.
She did replace Fatty as the footy show host as well.
But like the whole thing is.
But yeah, I know she left Channel 9 because she did have a falling out.
Well, that's what she says. That's what she's. But you don't know if there's any truth to it.
But I just look. I take your point. But all I'm saying is, I just don't think people really care that much about who's commentating.
That's also what I'm trying to say. Like, I don't think anybody's sitting there going, "What happened?" I can't even remember her name. Tiffany Salmon. Yeah. They weren't sitting there going, "Oh, I really miss Tiffany Salmon." Like, she was really good on the sidelines. She was bold and courageous to ask the players, "How was that first half?" Isn't that what the sideline reporter does?
Yeah, where she's talking
How'd you go out there?
Yeah. Like, where she's talking about, I'm only on for a few minutes out of the whole 2-hour coverage, and I've got this much. It's like, look, it's not. I don't think it's about you. It's just, But people don't care that much.
The people who were following her are most likely people who saw her, thought, "Oh, she's good looking," and unfortunately went and followed her Instagram hoping for bikini pics. Like, the people are disgusting. Social media is disgusting. Like, so it's I highly doubt that she was sacked because she was bold and courageous, because if she's a sideline reporter, it's just, when walking into the half, I hate it when they interview the players walking into the sheds at halftime anyway, but when they walk up to someone and go, "Hey mate, how do you think your first half went?" Like, "Oh, you're so bold, you're so courageous for asking that." The same thing.
I'll tell you what, there's a lot of other people, and I know, as you said, there are instances of women have been, fired from jobs and everything, and look, it's no good. But there's a lot of men who have been as well it's a difficult industry. It's a tough industry. And it's not just about the people who are on the camera as well. There's a lot of people off camera in those backroom jobs who have been let go as well. There's a lot of, it's not just her. There's a lot of people in this industry which seems to shrink all the time, who've been poorly treated at different stages. So I just think it's just a bit rich to me. It's sort of like, she's not the only one, There's a lot of people have been cast aside in this industry.
Absolutely. And, a lot of the casting aside also comes from them hiring their mates. Like Corey Parker was cast aside for Kevin Walters. Like this, it's very rarely because you were too bold and courageous.
There's your example. Corey Parker got sacked too.
Yeah. Because Kevin Walters was coming back. It wasn't because he was too bold and courageous. It was because Kevin Walters came back. Like, that's the thing. Like, no, I hate to break it to every single sports reporter that works for a major news organisation in front of the camera. There's very few of them who are bold and courageous. Okay, very few. You know why? You have to keep your job. And you're going to get sacked if you were bold and courageous.
Yeah. The reality is that with most of these jobs, everybody's pretty much replaceable. Yeah, if they weren't doing it, somebody else would be doing it. Exactly. And they'd be able to do just as good a job.
There's dozens or even hundreds of ex-players. And now because you have the NRLW as well, and some of those NRLW women are retiring, there's dozens of female and male rugby league players who are available for media commitments. So, if you're not popular, not noticeable, too bold and courageous, you're going to get sacked and replaced.
And I have noticed there are, a lot of NRLW players are getting opportunities now. Yeah. And look, that's great. I've seen a lot of them on podcasts. I saw one NRLW player was doing a podcast with Paul Kent. I was watching it yesterday. And she was doing a good job, and good luck to her. They're getting a lot more opportunities, and that's great. That's great. But all I'm saying in response to this is But she's not the only one to be cast aside.
Yeah.
Plenty of other... Let me tell you, I've been working in the media a long time. Plenty of other people have been just brushed, shown the door out of nowhere. It's a brutal industry, and all I'm saying is she's not the only one.
Yeah, well, like I said, Corey Parker got brushed. Unfortunately for Corey Parker.
Plenty of examples over the years.
When is Aaron Woods going to get brushed?
I don't think that'll be far away. That'll be coming soon.
That's it for Rugby League. Origin tomorrow. Today's Tuesday. This will probably go up Wednesday morning. So Origin tonight. Other than that, we're back to normal. Well, the teams are going to come out in an hour, and we'll see who's named, but who knows who'll play. The following week, we'll be back to normal, and the world will be good again.
The comp starts week after next.
Yes.
A week after Origin finishes.
Woke up this morning after 2 hard training sessions. Oh my God, I have so much washing, and boy, does it sting! But luckily, I have Garame cleaning codes Gear Guard, Clear the Funk, proud sponsor of SmartB. I've tried all of the ones that are around, and they're the ones that I suggest. They leave my clothes after training smelling like nothing. They don't do this thing where they smell like chemicals or flowers, and they don't advertise themselves as being a washing powder replacement. Instead, you add 1 cupful to your laundry, and off you go. Head to garamecleaning.co and buy yours now. GearGuard is a proud sponsor of the SmartB Sports Update.
Wimbledon is in full swing, and Alex de Minaur was defeated by Novak Djokovic last night after... I just read about it. Leading 2 sets.
No, so he was leading 1 set to love, set. But to be honest, I went in thinking this is only going one way. I'm not going to bother with this match. But then I checked the score, and de Minaur had won the first set 6-1. Was a shock. So I actually wasn't on that late, and I stay up late. So I actually watched the second set. But Djokovic won the second set, and at that point I thought, he's going to run away with it here, and he did. He won in 4 sets.
Well, Djokovic is in really fine form. He's getting a lot of highlights and posts on the internet, people saying he's playing some really good tennis. Sinner also had a scare. He was getting smashed, and then his opponent had to pull out because he tore his pec. Yeah, well,
I'll tell you what, we've talked a lot about our injuries legitimate. If someone's up 2 sets to love and they pull out injured, you know that it's a legitimate injury.
Against Yannick Sinner.
You really would not want to have to pull out injured, leading 2 sets to love, as you said, against Yannick Sinner.
Man, post-Asada Yannick Sinner isn't really in the best form, is he?
Well, I mean...
he could have won.
He got close to winning the French Open. Yeah. Alcaraz got him right at the...
But he hasn't won anything since his suspension, has he? No, I'm just kidding. But he almost lost. But there's been a lot of controversy. I don't know if you followed it. The Wimbledon doesn't have lines people this year.
Yeah, I did see that story.
And they only have technology instead. And in one of the matches, the Hawkeye wasn't working. And it called stop and gave a point away to the opposing player that shouldn't have been a point. And then they had to replay the point. There's a whole bunch of nonsense, but they don't have lines people for Wimbledon.
So they're just using the electronic line calls.
AI refs, they're coming.
Yeah, it's coming. Yeah, it's only a matter of time. So it's. I think it works well. Well, it's worked for tennis because it stopped the likes of John McEnroe, blowing up at the umpire. They can't blow up at AI,
Well, they can if it fails. Yeah. It kind of makes it worse, to be honest. When it fails, it's the same as the rugby. Well, rugby league doesn't have the thing, but the cricket, where cricket has what's it called? The snickometer and
DRS.
DRS, and the soccer has one as well, and they fail, and it creates more issues just because of human nature. Again, Louis C.K. tells this great joke about it was years ago. I saw it. He was getting on a plane and boarding, and the stewardesses, they were taking off, and now it's like, we've got something super special for you people today that no one else has ever experienced in their life. Today we're going to have the internet on the plane. It's a surprise. It's not extra money. You are all going to be able to access the internet once we're in the air. Never before happened in all over the world. So everyone's really excited. They take off. They're waiting, and then the stewardess comes on and says, "Hi, everyone. Unfortunately, we're having issues. The internet's not working. Sorry for that." The guy next to Louis C.K., "This is bullshit. I want a refund." And that just sums up technology. You get rid of the linesman. You think the AI or the technology is going to solve your problems, and then the technology fails and everyone will blow up even more. There's no perfect answer. What you want to do is assess whether the technology increases or decreases the mistakes. That's all that matters. There's always going to be mistakes. Mistakes can be done by, especially in high impact sports, because there's technology underneath the ground and stuff like that. It's going to shake, it's going to move and things like that, and it might cause issues. As long as it decreases the mistakes, and you never know unless you try. But AI refs are coming, man.
Yeah, geez, Yannick Sinner, 2 sets to love down against Grigor Dimitrov, and then Dimitrov retired. Yeah, Yannick Sinner.
It sucks so much.
Very lucky to get through there. So we got Taylor Fritz, Karen Kachanov, Cameron Norrie, Carlos Alcaraz, Yannick Sinner, Ben Shelton, Novak Djokovic left, and Caboli from Italy. So those are the 8 left in the quarterfinals. All the Aussies now gone, unfortunately, with de Minaur going out there against Djokovic.
Yep. And so Wimbledon finishes this week?
Yeah, it'll be Sunday night. I'm going into late Sunday night, pushing into Monday morning.
Novak Djokovic won his 100th match. He's looking to equal Roger Federer's record for Wimbledon.
Yeah, Federer's won 8 Wimbledon titles. Djokovic has won 7. Tell you what, if Yannick Sinner's going 2 sets to love down against Dimitrov, Djokovic would fancy his chances, I think. I'm pretty sure they're on the same side of the draw. I can't get onto the Wimbledon website at the moment for some reason, but I'm pretty sure that those two are on the same side of the draw, and so if they both win their quarterfinals, they'll be in a semi-final against one another.
Yeah.
Ooh. That'll be a good one. I'll be hoping to watch that if that happens.
Novak Djokovic has to beat Caboli. 22nd. Yeah, he can do that, right?
And look, in that set he played against de Minaur, he wasn't himself either. He got the job done, but he was a bit scrappy. Just not putting points away as well as he used to. It just wasn't himself, but did enough to get the job done. Yeah.
Well, he probably took it easy because he knows he's got a harder match next, right? Yeah. Over to the cricket. Australia has won the Test series over West Indies. Was it ever any doubt? Again, their batting has not been...
No, this Sam Constas, he's really running out of chances here. Because you might remember he scored that 60 on Test debut against India on Boxing Day. But since then, his scores have really left a lot to be desired. He's made 8, 23, 22, 3, 5, 25, and 0. So and his average has now dropped to 18.25 in Test cricket. So, I think they'll give him the 3rd Test because, they may as well. They've got the series wrapped up. They'll give him one more chance to come good. But, it's their last Test before the Ashes this summer. So, if he doesn't get runs in that last Test, I reckon he's going to have a hard time holding on to his spot for the Ashes.
Yeah, there's no one else. And the other players...
Khawaja is struggling as well.
Khawaja is another one where they've announced his retirement, right?
Not sure. I'll check.
But it's like they did with Dave Warner. They announced his retirement 2 years in advance. That's like...
he's not announced a specific retirement, but you would assume it's going to be after that Ashes series.
Yeah, it's like the whole... we've discussed that before. Like, you can't really... Test cricket is not the cricket where your whole top order can fail and then Glenn Maxwell can come out and score 250 and save your match. Like, one day and T20 you can do that. But Test cricket, the top order needs to do their job, and none of them are performing very well. So
they're still relying on... Man, it's a good thing Steve Smith got some runs in that test. They're still heavily relying on him. Obviously, Labuschagne's been dropped now. They ran out of patience with him. Still a huge reliance on Steve Smith with the batting. And look, Travis Head as well.
The Ashes is in Australia?
Yeah.
Okay, so that should be fine then.
Should be.
Because
and look, India beat England too in that second test of their series too. So
yep, there you go.
So that was disappointing for England.
But they got a 5 series.
Yeah, they do. I think it's 1-1 after 2.
Yeah, it's 1-1. Yeah. Then their next one starts on Thursday.
Yeah. So that's an interesting spot, that series at the moment.
But you don't want England getting into form and Bazball finally working when they're going to be coming here for the Ashes when Australia's batting is in such poor form.
Yeah, I mean, you'd like to think, given that England have such a poor record in Australia, you'd like to think that our bowling attack will, as ageing as they are, they're still getting the job done. And I know it was only the West Indies, but look, it is an away test series win. Away test series wins are hard to come by.
Yeah.
So I would like to think that ageing bowling attack has got one more Ashes series in them. It'll be their last Ashes series together, though, by the time the next one's on in England. So the next one in England will be 2027.
2027.
Yeah, I don't think they'll all still be playing by then. So I think that this will be their last Ashes series together.
You have to think there's so many of them that'll be retiring before 2027. Even Steve Smith.
Yeah, that's the team for that Ashes series. So that'll be July 2025. Yeah, so that'll be 2 years from now.
Yeah.
The team will look completely different by then. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's it for the week. Origin today, tomorrow. Well, it depends on when we publish, which will probably be tomorrow. So it's Origin tonight. This is being recorded on Tuesday.
Tuesday Arvo, an hour before the teams get named. Let's see what happens with Galvin this week.
And Flanagan.
Yeah.
Don't forget, for all your CBD needs, shop at optimumcbd.store. Orders over $99, get free delivery, and you must be over 18 to order. Also, don't forget, if you train in any way, to go to garamecleaning.co and get Gear Guard, add it to your laundry to get rid of the stink and bacteria caused by heavy sweating. Hop onto Smart Play. Play as many games as you can. The person who scores the most points in NRL and AFL win a Guernsey or a jersey, depending on which league they play in. So it's combined score. Play as many games as you can. All your scores add up. Play free games. Play smart coin games. You can also jump on Origin and win one of 5 free jerseys. And the tipping comp is really heating up. Mitchell Pearce has dropped a lot. There's a few guys that are catching up. So that $10,000 for the end of the year is still up for grabs. It's anyone's game. And that's it for the week. Fare thee well. Have a good rest of the week, Dan.
Thanks, Sean. We'll catch you next week.